more than likely it's there. But I want to dive deep with it just for a second, because
right,
with me, and I put a little post on Outside of the Grid this morning. I was talking about Doug Carter. He was the superintendent for the Indiana State Police. I mean, this guy is like he reports to the governor. This guy is the guy in the know. Everybody reports to him in the State Police of Indiana, ISP. And of course, I made a they had a press conference the other day, and they said, yeah, we arrested Richard Allen for 2 counts of murder, felony murder, which is part 2 of the code. And people can go look that up. There's been a million podcasters talk about it. But
you're right. And, of course, all of this is allegedly. But now, the only reason I'm truly asking here is, not to put you on the spot, is, we want that resolution. And we had a little back channel discussion about, I watched this presentation, and I was disappointed because it was more of an act in terms of just, we've solved this. We know these things. It was political or maybe whatever. And so I was just a little disappointed. It just kind of makes me wonder how much of the pressure for these people to solve this has come from folks like us. When we finally get a news preference, it actually doesn't tell us anything. Have you seen anything that was? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think it was an act. I think it was a show. And of course, there
you go. Now, excuse me, just for a second. When I said act, I do mean they was putting on a performance, a pony show, a dog and pony show. They were trying to dress it up, lift it up better than it was because they were trying to detract from something. But I'm kind of wondering why. So you're right. Please
I'll
go ahead.
Deeper than that. I'll go deeper than that. I understand Doug Carter. He's a very spiritual man. But to be a spiritual man, you have to be a man of faith. And a man of faith is sometimes you get challenged. Specifically if you're a spiritual man on top of a man of faith. There's a lot of people out there that talk about, I have faith. I'm a Jesus man. I believe in God. But that's different than being a spiritual man. Because a spiritual man has a relationship with God. It's not just I have faith in some blind thing. You actually have a relationship. And Doug Carter is the type of guy that has a relationship with God as he understands him. And I think that Doug Carter got challenged whenever this all went down 5 years and 8 months ago when those 2 little girls were killed on that bridge. And he had all this stuff going on. Instead of everybody talking in town, everybody was whispering. And he had a big challenge before him. He had his faith challenged. And then a couple years later, things came up. And I think that what Doug Carter, he had kind of a catharsis. He went through a catharsis. He went through a catharsis. He had to understand that good will override evil. He didn't understand that because he thought that whenever it all went down, that these two little girls were killed on this bridge. Nobody was talking. Everybody was whispering, and he couldn't. He didn't understand it. But now, the spirituality that he understood revealed it to him later. In my opinion, and from what I'm reading about what Doug Carter is saying and what I read in this
absolutely, all this is personal opinions. Yes, it's all personal opinions. Go ahead.
Personal opinion, but I think it goes deeper than that.
It really does, but you're still saying what you believe. That's all I'm trying to say.
What I believe.
Go ahead.
What I believe, yes, sir. So I believe that there are evil forces in the universe. There was a serial killer, which is Richard Allen. I believe he's a serial killer, or that he was a serial killer in the making. And I also believe that there was a whole CSAM ring, but I don't believe they worked together. I think there were 2 evil forces out there, and that Doug Carter couldn't understand that. Specifically, those little girls, Abby and Libby, got killed on February the 13th, 2017. It just messed with him. But God works in mysterious ways, and he works in his own way. And you can't understand it, and I can't understand it always when it's happening. But as things unfold, you'll get a sense of what's going on. So
again, we've had a few discussions about, being agnostic. I'm not in the position to understand the greater being that directs this universe. And me to assume that I can understand it is arrogant. So, like with him, being humble is a way to be shown that you're not quite doing right. But I don't think the man did any of this on purpose. I mean, I just think you're trying to go deeper, and at the same time, I believe everybody had that deeper feeling. But I also think it's a more superficial thing. There were some mistakes made, and again, all I'm trying to, I believe Richard Allen is probably the guy. If you take the pictures, we've had a few discussions, like, that's a very good candidate. But why did they find it? Well, they haven't released it yet, and so for them to actually get on to a thing to go, well, we arrested somebody without any substance of why you arrested them other than the heartstring story of why we missed this. We hate this took so long. Well, we all hate it took so long.
No,
but give us the meat of what and why. Go ahead. Sorry.
But it's not bad. It's not bad. Here's the deal.
No, it's not bad. Truly, it's not. But, we as a people who, like me and you have discussed, I mean, you have, excuse me for saying ranting because that's not really the right word, but, you have vehemently embraced it. I want this solved. When we finally get that goal line within reach, you're reaching for it, but you really get no substance. Has the goal been crossed? That's what I'm trying to dig into. That is the absolute deepest level of that, regardless of the officials that actually talk to us. Go ahead. Sorry.
There were two independent evil forces, and I didn't really believe in good and evil before this case. Just like Doug Carter, I believe whatever I believed. But on that
absolutely,
bridge,
and you have the right to believe that. Go ahead, please.
On the bridge that day, there were two forces of evil. They weren't working together. There was a CSAM ring, Kagan Klein and his little cohorts that were speaking with him, with those girls, or at least one of them. And then there was a serial killer that's probably killed people in Tennessee and probably in Indiana as well. And those two forces, if it weren't for the CSAM ring, we'd never caught the serial killer. If it weren't for that serial killer, we'd never caught this CSAM ring. The forces
and you're right.
Lost that day. Because, but now you see, let me say this.
Go ahead, please.
Doug Carter, whenever he saw those girls get killed, he was like, and nobody was talking because they couldn't. They were whispering because they didn't know the answer. Most murders, you and I talked about this from day one on our podcast, was that we talked about a small town. Why have they not solved this? To me, it's existential. It's greater. It's deeper. There were two forces of evil, and they were out there, and they killed those girls. But those girls sacrificed, and that's why Doug Carter speaks so reverently about these girls.
And he really should. True.
But
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They took out the biggest CSAM ring ever in the history of Indiana, maybe even the United States of America, and maybe even the world, because there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of people taken out by this. And it took down a serial killer, even if it was just his first kill, which I don't believe it is. So Doug Carter's faith was challenged until a certain point, and then he says, now Doug Carter only talks about what he knows, and it comes out in fits and spurts. But I'm telling you right now, there was evil. I didn't understand it either. I could not understand what evil was. In fact, I had a friend, Tina, that we've been talking to on the podcast, and she.
Yes, and I hate I've missed a lot of those conversations, but yeah, she has very awesome insights. Thank you, Tina, for coming on the cast. I hate that we have not been able to all be together. Sorry, Brad, please continue.
Well,
just giving credit to her because she does have great insight.
She talked about this a frog giving a scorpion a ride across the stream. And we've all heard about it. It's like the snake. Like, well, you motherfucker, you should have known that I was going to bite you from the very beginning.
It is in my nature. It's my nature to be a scorpion. Yes, he convinces the frog to give him a thing, and then he goes, why did you sting me? We will both die. It's my nature. There's
my nature.
Fable. Yes. Go ahead, please.
Yes, and that has to do with the CSA. But now, it challenged Doug because his faith got challenged. Because he was like, why did this happen? But then he understood, and it's hard to understand, those beautiful little girls that everybody knows so well. In fact, I mean, they're saints in Doug's mind. They're saints in my mind. They gave up their life. They somehow, I don't even know if they even knew what they were doing. Maybe they were angels or saints or something in a way that we can't even understand. But as a result, their sacrifice has not been in vain. There has been a multitude of things that has went down. I believe a serial killer. I believe that Richard Allen, Ricky Allen, whatever his name is, I believe he was a serial killer, if not totally, then in the making. And we all know what Kagan was. And, you know, there was recently some charges dropped against him, whatever, but that's just because it's just weak charges. He's still got enough to keep him in jail for a long time.
Well, and you're right. And I want to insert this because Kagan is the stereotype for the pedophile living in the basement of his grandmother's house. You know, when you see memes about the type of person, KK is, just from, the evidence I see, he is the stereotypical, you want to sucker a little girl? He truly fits that bill. Now, is he guilty? Nah, maybe not. But come on, dude. When you walk like a duck, act like a duck, and quack like a duck, you're probably a fucking duck. And those are a lot of those things. And, you know, like with, you know, Richard Allen and this, there's good and evil, but, of course, everybody has their own interpretation of it. The commissioner, I think his faith was challenged because when you find out that it truly was a local person and you were just, I will not say willfully blind, but maybe blind because that's a good old boy. It goes back to, we've had a few discussions about the good old boy complex. Did they miss things because they thought, well, nobody in our community would do this because everybody here's good old boys? It's a very controversial type thing, you know, and I know the man feels bad. I don't want to say he should feel bad because if it's honest mistakes, then don't feel bad for honest mistakes. But if you know deep down that you missed something because you just wasn't willing to look at it, you should feel contrite. You should feel challenged in your faith because you're not serving the folks that you're swearing to take care of. Because if it's political, because you're worried about keeping your job, well, you're wrong for it. If you're hiding shit because, good old boy Richard, whatever Allen, again, we don't know the circumstances, which is why I'm saying is it actually creates a little more controversy. If we could actually get the whole thing, he's been arrested. Why was he arrested? What are the terms? What are the conditions? I haven't seen it. Maybe you had. Maybe somebody out there else has. But I think the guy's guilty because you're right. He does fit the bill. All those circumstances absolutely fit. But in democracy, man, it's alleged crimes. You got to give them the chance to be innocent, even if they look guilty as hell. And that's where it goes back to some of the folks that if you made a mistake, own it so we can actually get this justice. Don't let them slip through the cracks. And I'm not saying they did it. Maybe they just missed it. You know, now, again, it's taken 5 years to, I guess, solve something. If it's solved, we still don't know, to do this, and it shouldn't have been that hard. What do you think?
Well, I think that, I'm going to be honest with you on something. I think that...
Well, by all means, please.
I think that this is a very complex case. And this guy...
there's no easy solutions. You know, we're speculating. Totally speculation. Total speculation. Yes.
Speculation's kind of over on this. I mean, we kind of know a lot of things now. You know, with
how Doug was acting, the commissioner. That's what I was referring to. Yeah, go ahead.
Not for me. Not for me.
Okay.
I think that
that's good.
He said that he knew. You know, he said a long time ago this guy was local. That was one of the things that challenged me. I just could not see it either. Nobody.
And that's why I'm asking you. Yes, please. Yes.
This challenges your faith because this is a guy. This is your neighbor. You know, that's the problem. This is a guy that has owned a house in town since 2006. He works at the CVS pharmacy. He checked out the family. He rushed over to them whenever they were in the store. He gave them their pictures for the memorial service free.
See, you're telling me all the things I was asking about because I've been out of town. Yeah. I don't know these things. That's what I wanted to know is what support this man is Bridge Guy. There you go. Well, thank you. That's what I was wanting to know.
Well,
go ahead.
No. I'm just talking about, we're talking about theory. We don't know the specifics. All I know is, you know, I'm an intuitive. I don't know. I'm not privy to the actual documents that prove him to be the Bridge Guy. There's something they did. A search of his they did a search of his property, and they found stuff that gave them a judge agreed with them to make an arrest, and they've been sitting there for 5 years and 8 months and not made an arrest. But they found something that did that. I don't know what the lead that caused that was. Maybe it was, to me, in my mind, it was their neighbor. His neighbor, it was his family that made that inference. But now my perspective has nothing to do with that. Mine has to do with the bigger picture, because I don't look at specifics. I look at Doug Carter and I go back to his challenge of faith, because he saw for all this time that this is like you and I talked about on this podcast. We've talked about, well, you know, typically something like this would have been solved within 2 or 3 days. In fact, they figured it would. But no one was talking. Everybody was whispering. Everybody was whispering because this guy is under the radar. This is a serial killer. This is not some guy that this is not some guy that had a criminal record and he was, you know, snorting cocaine and crystal meth all the time, whatever else. This is a guy that worked at the CVS pharmacy. This is a pharmacy tech guy. This is a guy that was married for 30 years. This is a guy that had a child, 28 years old. This is a 50-year. This is a guy our age. This is a guy that does not fit the mold. You know. I
know, but now, you know, all right. So now, exactly the things you just said fits back into another conversation we had about. Bridge Guy is Gen X. He's about this age. These are the things he did. And if you go back, now we've talked about a hitchhiker, we've talked about a stranger, the guy under the bridge. I mean, you know, we've been wrong, we've been close. But that last one, we actually took the time to analyze. Look, the type of person this is going to be reasonably local, correct? He's going to be around his 50s. He's going to be a Gen X because of the things we talked about. You know, again, go back to our podcast. That's why we think the Bridge Guy is Gen X. And he was born in the 80s. Well, he was. I mean, we were right on a lot of things, but we were wrong on so many others. I'm still so very glad the guy has been allegedly caught again until he's convicted. He has the presumption of innocence. But... yes, I do think the thing's been solved. And, it all kind of fits together. It's just, I understand that, you know, the Doug guy, I hate the podcast or the newscast or whatever they give is more of a show than informative. I'm sorry. I understand the guy has got his conscience of faith and, you know, they're all whispering and wishing they had solved this sooner, but when you release a public announcement, it should actually mean something. What they said was coddling. It was, well, we took so long to do this, and that, but there was no substance to why was Richard Allen actually arrested. Well, what led you to those things?
Listen to me. Doug Carter does not talk about things that he thinks. He talks about things that he knows. And there's a difference. And they couldn't really prove it. They didn't have everything they needed. But in a case like this, most of these cases like this, they go on for 30 years. And everybody talks about the ISP and the Marshal Service and the FBI and Delphi. They solved this thing pretty quick. And this is a very complex matter because this was to me and to spiritual men like Doug, this was a battle of good and evil. And the story is, the big story that Doug's trying to tell And then I'm reiterating for everybody now.
I am not downing the man. He is actually trying to...
Listen, this was a battle of good and evil. And there was multiple variables going on out there on that bridge that day. These girls, they were being attacked by multiple forces of evil. But good won out in the end. There was a CSAM ring independently operating by itself. There was a serial killer independently operating by himself.
What is the... let me insert. You say CSA ring? I don't know what that acronym... I do, but I'm trying to be for the folks listening to...
You can't... No, if people listen to this podcast, they'll know what that means, but you can't mention it or we'll get dinged by Google.
I got you. Okay. I apologize. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah. I'm not the Google guy. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes.
Well,
I was just trying to define a... Yeah, go ahead.
There was two independently evil forces on the bridge that day. And it challenged Doug because of the fact that there was... He's like, well, does evil win? I mean, these girls were killed. They died. These sweet, beautiful, innocent little girls. I mean, they were little girls. They were doing what they were doing. And just like all children, 13 and 14 years old, they want to be popular. They want to be wanted.
And they all think they know more than anybody else. I mean, come on. We were teenagers, so please. Stupidity and ignorance. Ignorance is not a sin.
Well, it's not. But that's not even their perspective, though. Their perspective was that they were being young, just like we were being young. We weren't thinking about the deeper stuff when we were young. We were thinking
because we were ignorant, Brad. That's what I was trying to say. Is ignorance isn't a sin. We were ignorant of the bigger things in life. At the time these girls were killed, they were ignorant of the bigger things in life.
That's one way of putting it. But they should be allowed to be like that because we were. But they weren't allowed to make mistakes. They were killed by very evil forces. These are evil. When you're talking about CSAM and when you're talking about serial killers, they were destined to die. But when they died, it was not a sacrifice upon the universe for nothing. They took down the biggest CSAM ring in the history of Indiana, and they took out a serial killer. And he's going to pay his bill. I mean, there has been retribution in this case, and we can say about whatever you want to. You can micromanage the sausage making of the Indiana State Police, and a lot of people do. They have been all kinds of scrutinous. Me and you did a show. We would not want to be a part of LE on this case because this is a very complex case because of the fact that there was not just one person after those girls on the bridge that day. There was.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, I do not
trying to attack those girls.
And you're right. I don't disagree with anything you said, but all I'm talking about is the actual announcement. I mean, the reality of it, dude. There's so much stuff we don't know. It will never ever be in the report. There was the battle of good and evil, the innocent young girls, trying to come into womanhood, thinking they know better than their parents and getting jumped by a predator, which is Bridge Guy. I mean, we will never actually know that. But when you get down to it, everybody wants to know answers, which means details. And when I started this, all I was trying to say is the announcement gave no details. And until we have details, we absolutely do not know if a CSA ring has been busted. We don't know what's going on because there is absolutely zero details. It's all speculation. The presumption of innocence is still important, but I would like to think it's been solved. I would like to think, hey, Doug Carter, whether he's spiritual, not spiritual, I'm not in the place to judge the man. I think he's got a good heart. I think he wants to do the good things. But when you do a newscast and say the Delphi murders are solved and you give zero substance to support, why was Brad Allen arrested? Why is KK out? why did y'all search those rivers? And when you say everything is, well, that's all still under investigation, go look to the website, and there's nothing there but search warrants authorized. You don't really know if it's been solved because they're saying it's been solved.
See, I just all that to me is, I mean, that to me, it doesn't even, everything, you're looking at the sausage making. You're trying to speed up where we're at right now. You don't.
Could be. You could be right.
KK,
I mean, I won't disagree with that.
Listen.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
KK has been charged, and he has admitted in transcripts that we've seen that he has done things that he shouldn't have done. So we know that part, and he will.
Yes.
He's already in prison. He's been there for 2 years. He's in jail. He's not getting out for a long time. And this other guy is in prison too, and he doesn't even have a bail. When he first went in, the bail was set at $20 million. He'll never get out. He's not going to get out because of the fact that they would not make an arrest in this case, because this is such a big case and because everybody has been very scrutinous of this case. But again, we cannot see the sausage making. They can't reveal a lot of things now. But
and you're right.
My point is that watching Doug Carter is a man who is a man of faith and a man of spirituality, which a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people say, I believe in God, but they don't really have a relationship with any kind of spirituality. Now, you can call that insane. You can call it whatever you want. But whenever you have a man of faith and a man of spirituality, and he encounters something in the world he can't explain, because typically man of faith and spirituality, in the battle of good and evil, you win immediately. But out there in the world, there is, in a world of statistics and probability, there is things that happen that aren't good. To me, in my mind, it's very small. It's like a 30% of things that happen bad. 70% of things are good. But whenever you come across something at first, even though it's going to be good in the end, the sacrifice.
It looks worse than it is.
Exactly. The sacrifice of those girls, it looks horrible up front because you think, oh my God. But now there's people that die for a lot less. And those girls were brave enough. They stuck together. They made a video and an audio of this guy, and they left enough data there that things could be traced down. And yes, it doesn't come at the speed I wanted. I wanted a fucker knocked down the day it happened. I was laying in bed with the flu in 2017 when this went down. I had flu twice that year, A and B. And I laid here and I was like going, I have a kid their age. And I was like, well, this needs to be solved. And then it went on and on and on. But again, to solve something this complex, when you have two variables going on, you have a CSAM ring that was talking to the girl, and then you have on the day that CSAM ring was supposed to meet them, you have a serial killer on the floor. This is a more spiritual thing. This is bigger than what most people could comprehend because we don't think about that. This is battle. This is a battle
and you're right.
of good and evil.
It is, and see, you finally kind of helped me understand why you've been so passionate about this case. Because, we've talked about this a few times on the offline thing. You're way more passionate about this case than I am. And I never really could totally understand why, but I do kind of understand now. So thank you for explaining it to me finally. But that faith factor that you're talking about, Doug Carter, yes, that's very important. It's just a case of, I wish it would have been solved sooner. I hope it is absolutely solved. But, the justification for these girls, and like what you're talking about, this is why you feel this way. Well, that answers a lot of questions when we start talking about spirituality. Doug being spiritual, he can be a spiritual man and be a great man. But, good and evil is all, perspective. But we all know that the outside universe, influences everything we think about. And when you start talking about damn it, my tongue is fat. Spirituality, you got to start looking at, you're right, a bigger picture. What influences what? So the death of these girls, as tragic as it was, it did make them heroes. They did things that little girls might not think about. It took longer than we wanted to solve, but hopefully it's solved. I will not say it is solved because the man has not been convicted, regardless of the evidence. You know what I'm trying to say. That's democracy. Then you go back to but I still like the feeling of, think it's been solved. And the man, Doug, I just hate that I feel, don't mean I am, or he is, I feel he came in to make it as a show rather than doing it. Exactly what you're talking about. Getting up there and being happy that we finally caught that cocksucker. That motherfucker has aided my mind for years. But it was all calm and plain and just felt like a show. I would rather have been him being honest about we finally got him. It will be proven. We can't say why, but we got him. That's what I would love to have actually seen. But can't be happy all the time, right?
Well, I think that's what he said. He said, that's where we're at. But now I'm also, I'm a man of spirituality, but I'm also a man of science. In graduate school and in college, I had a double major in college, and a specific major in graduate school. And the one thing that I studied more than anything, in fact, I dove deep in the databases, and I looked at different types of statistical tests. I looked at criterion validity. I looked at multiple regression. I looked at correlations. I'm a man of science.
You're the man that will not actually look at Freudian science and just say everything's Freudian. There are different interpretations of the same science.
Let me talk about it for a minute.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm a man of science. I believe in probabilities. Now I know that there are, where we're at with this guy we're at with Mr. Richard Allen. I look at things like in terms of statistics. And I've looked at all kinds of databases, as I said. I looked at it in college, I looked at it in graduate school, and none of that stuff is ever 100% perfect. But here's the deal, though. You can look at probabilities. It all adds up. Like with me, even with him, it's 0.33, 33% of him doing it. And yes, Ron Logan, there's a 0.05. There is a small percentage of it being something like that. For everything that you can list, all these different variables out there, it could be those. I mean, it's a very small likelihood of that being the case. But this guy, they would not have made this arrest if they didn't have physical evidence. It would not be happening because they had been very cautious.
And I get that. I just wish they had posted a little more of it. That's all I meant, but you're right. Yes.
A lot of people say that, but you cannot look when you're.
But if you make an arrest, there's no reason you can't publish what you. All right, so they went to a judge, and they said, "Here is why we."
Listen. If you have people that you owe money to, that is, if there has been like any kind of a reward money. If there is still unopened things going on with it, then you have to not say anything because you can't release names. Yes, it sucks for people. But again, this is the sausage making. The sausage will be ready to eat in a few months. You cannot.
Oh, yeah, it will. I said I wish.
This stuff takes time. I know. I do too. But I know also with following the amount of cases that I follow, that stuff does not go at the time, but it does come. And here's the deal, is that evil did not win here. We have taken down, not me, like Doug Carter says, the people that, there's a lot of good people out here. And people can say bad things about law enforcement all they want to. And I can argue with the rules they're following. I can argue with some of the things that some of them do because of power trips or whatever else. But there are a lot of good people that give up a lot of their life for that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Hey, man, law enforcement, I mean, they don't get quite the credit they need. I mean, me and you have had several discussions about. Well, and that's what I was getting at is, the people who should earn the most money should be firefighters, policemen, teachers. I mean, people who do some of that civil service. But now there should be accountability. If you're a shitty teacher, you don't get that. I mean, there's so much of that. But you're right. Police officers are 100%. Not giving the right credit. And so you end up with, I'm sorry, you get some bad apples in every barrel. If you go back, there's some people who are more worried about the little control and the power of it rather than I just want to make everybody safe.
Hey,
the biggest majority
in everything you do, 20. Listen. There's in everything you do is a 20-80 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the shit. There's like always 20% of the people that are bad. I mean, that 20-80 rule you got to take into account. There are bad apples, but I believe, and I said it just a few minutes ago. I believe that there is a predominance of good in our universe. Yes, there's bad apples.
Yes, and now absolutely. I just think our media and the way we are, again, now that some of this gets back into the Gen X conversations, there's so much info coming into a person in this time and age, especially younger generation. We are actually inducing adult deficit attention disorder.
Yeah.
Because every time you open your Facebook, it goes, ding, oh, my cousin said this.
Right now.
Ding, ding.
Right now.
Yes.
Right now. Right now.
We are creating.
Right now.
We are creating ADHD with this. But when we were kids, Gen X, again, we only had limited access to it. We had tiny access to it. We wasn't stupid about it. But no, we didn't have all the details. So, but yes, we are actually creating a harder thing with it. Yes.
We lived in a time where you didn't get instant results too. So that's why that I'm saying what I'm saying is that
instant gratification was not available. Yes, sir. You're absolutely right.
It wasn't. Now here's the deal. There are cases just now being solved from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Lots of cases from the mid 90s, which were a very violent time in America. They're finding all kinds of stuff about the Zodiac killer. I mean, hey, the Dahmer series on that popular network. The Generation X. In fact, we did a show called BG Was Born in 1980, plus or minus 5 years. We were
right. Yeah.
You may not even remember that, but I do because I produced it.
No, I was talking about that a few minutes ago. Is we made the prediction that BG was a Gen X guy. He was born between this time, and then it turns out not long after they started searching the rivers. They started and they found the current guy. Now I'm not saying we're unique about it. No, I'm just saying.
No. Listen though. I'm not even saying the rivers have anything to do with Richard Allen. Okay, I'm just saying my perspective. Listen. I said, and I'm not going to argue anything else. I said, because I don't know what you're talking about there. That's superfluous to me. I said he was between the ages of 38 and 45. He was 44 whenever he committed this murder. Okay? That's what I'm saying. And also what I said was, and I got screenshots of it, is that it was probably somebody we've never talked about. And I also said one specific thing, that I believe that this is what I said, and I have it in writing with you, I had it with Lauren, and I had it with Tina. I said it's either CP, MH, which is a pastor, or, as the Southern boys say, someone that looks just like them. And it is that case. Richard Allen
yes, sir,
just like those two guys. Because I've looked at that video. I have spent, over the past several years of my life, I've sit there for hours, and I produced videos on this channel, and I've spent hours and hours and hours with it because I care about it. These people were important to me because I saw, people talk about Doug Carter, but I saw this man, he was telling us what he could. He can't tell us everything, because if he did, then it would jeopardize the case. Just like right now, they're not talking about everything they could talk about. Stuff they think, they're telling you stuff that they know, that they can prove today. Okay? That's where I'm at.
Well, and I understand that. I didn't mean to detract from that. I was saying that, yes, Brad, you absolutely predicted this. We had that discussion about that. It was just funny that right after we had that show, that's when this new search warrant for the river and shit come up. All I was trying to say is we did kind of predict this is the kind of guy that was going to be there. The river was just after we predicted it. It was just a correlation of, it's funny, we talked about it and they suddenly did this. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that.
No. But I get what you're saying, but I want to make it clear, because whenever you're talking on this, people scrutinize everything you say. And
that's why I'm trying to clarify. Absolutely.
I'm not going to let anybody, you or anybody else, put words in my mouth. I'm going to make sure people understand what I'm saying, because I'm not saying anything about that river search, because I don't know about that river search.
I do not either. I was just making that comment that after we had that conversation, that happened. That's it. The end of it.
That river search does have nothing to do with the murder of these girls. It may have
just what I said.
But,
yes, sir.
But you know what I'm saying? This has been a very passionate day for me, and I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying. You know, because you and I hadn't.
And that's why I'm trying to clarify it.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is to me. I see resolution in this thing coming real quick. Now it's not going to be.
I would love to see that. Yes.
It's not good. It's not going to be the same kind of quick that a lot of people want, but it's been quick enough for me, because I watched these cases, you know, and I studied this stuff, social psychology and stuff in college. I looked at it. I've looked at, and I mentioned before, the probabilities and databases. I looked at crime databases. I have ran T-tests, correlation tests, criterion validity tests, multiple regression tests, where you go in and you look at several sets of data and crimes, and you run it down to 3 or 4 variables. That's multiple regression. And you look at what happens. And I'm
you do a lot more than I do, you know. But, yeah, I mean, I respect you for doing that. I mean, I really do.
It's not respect. It's not respect.
Well, I respect you for it, but go ahead.
Everybody has their own way of living life. And to me, that's been my perspective. And I'm not even trying to, you know, fluff it up. I'm not even wanting to sound like that. But the reality of it is that I'm happy with where things are at now, because I think that law enforcement has gotten to the point to where they can, whenever you make an arrest, you don't make an arrest in a case like this unless you're pretty damn sure you know what you're talking about. In other words, these days, if you make an arrest in a murder, you have physical evidence. You have DNA. You have other things going on. This is not just some shot to dark. I'm going to pull that son of a bitch in right here, and we're going to nail that son of a bitch down regardless right here. This ain't what this is.
No, it is. It was just the thing of, you know, hey, they do have their reasons. I mean, you're absolutely right. You do not make an arrest like this in a 5-year event with this much scrutiny on it, with this many podcasters talking about it, without evidence. You better have evidence to back it up. All I wished is they would have actually published it, because if you went to a judge and said, we have an arrest warrant for Richard Allen, they had to present evidence to that judge. Yes, they did not have to explain it, because, again, you look at the current political thing and that orange fella, they don't present everything they do to the judge. I'm just saying, in this case, I would have loved to see some evidence to actually give me the better feeling that it's actually been solved. I do think it's been solved. So I'm with you there. I mean, I think the guy looks like he fits it. He fits with all of it. All I'm saying is, as a group in a community,
but we're not going to get there because we're not the lawyers in this case. We will.
I understand that. It was just a wishful.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong for wanting that. I think everybody. Today Show, ABC News, everybody was at that press conference the other day, and they walked out going, well, what happened here? But now here's what happened there. They announced that murder charges were pressed against Richard Allen. That's what they announced. That is not just some superfluous thing. That's big.
No, that means they have evidence. You're right. They have followed up. They have followed through the chain of evidence. They've done the investigation. We've had the things about the cell towers. Well, why did they know the cell towers? Well, then it came out, they did know the cell towers. But they kept it a little quiet because they were trying to trip people up. I mean, I do know that. I mean, I just hate the guys couldn't go, we've got this cocksucker. That's all I wish. But they're working on it, and it will slowly come out. I mean, it'll be the girls will have the justice.
I understand that, and everybody that really studies it understands it. But now we have to be realistic with it. That's the whole point of me bringing you in, because I know you aren't as ingrained as a lot of us. You're the
which is why I was asking. Absolutely right.
This son of a bitch should have been hung 2 years ago. Well, yeah, he should have been, but even the strongest evidence doesn't work like that. Even the weakest, even the strongest cases you got. Let's just say that we would have made an arrest 2 days after it occurred. That thing may still be in court, and this thing it ain't done.
You're right.
It could be in
court
for
not.
Years and years.
That's why. That's why. I mean, I would love to think the guy, has been caught, but until they actually convict him, we can't be sure. And that's what bothers me is I would love to be more sure about it, but this is all speculation on as to what and why. I'm glad you've actually explained why you're so passionate about it. I've just been kind of, me, we're just good buddies. We talk shit. I love the girls and I would love to take care, but I can't understand some of that, but I am glad it's hopefully getting solved. I'm glad we was able to talk about it. I hope anybody in our community has talked about this, has helped this case, but we can't say it's done until it's actually done. I guess that's where I was going, is I keep seeing things. It's solved. He's not convicted.
No. No one has said it's solved, but everyone is saying that we have got.
Actually, Brad, I will disagree with you. Everything I see on YouTube says Delphi solved, and that's my contention with it. I'm talking about.
I mean, it is solved, but it's solved. But it's not. There's different levels.
Maybe it's creators that are not as careful as you and I is what I'm getting at, Brad. It's the folks that don't have as good of morals to say solved, and it's like, no, it is not solved. We hope it is solved.
They're not rational people, though. They're not rational people.
But
see, I don't even give a shit about any of that, though. My reality of it is.
But it's out there.
But listen to me. Not on my show. It's not. Okay, my show is not talking about that. My show says one thing. Listen.
I understand.
Listen. It says that Doug Carter went through this is a guy that's leading this thing. And if you've ever been in a leadership situation where you're leading, putting in a motor in a vehicle, or where you're running a project, or whether you're doing a murder investigation.
Oh, no. Yeah, leadership has.
You can't always you have to compartmentalize. You can't let everybody know about what all is going on, because there's a lot of things you can't put into words.
You're right.
You have to rely.
Absolutely.
I have to rely upon my team to do what I ask them to do. And there was a time in Doug's experience with this where he was very, in my mind, this is my speculation, and I'm not trying to do anything other than that. And I've made that well.
Yes, very clear. And yes, sir.
Okay, but now I believe this. This is not just some bullshit to me. This is where I stand with it. I think that this case put a huge spiritual challenge upon Doug Carter. I think that he had to deal with, like with my conversation with you and your conversation with somebody else, because of the fact that you have a very specific agenda with something. And him
being a local, he's going to be more spiritual about it.
Let me speak. He came into it with that. He came in with it with that spiritual perspective, and he came in there trying to get things done, but he couldn't. He came across challenge upon challenge upon challenge, but then he had this, and just like I've listened to this guy as many hours as I've listened to you, because I've spent a lot of time listening to what he's actually said, because he has to be very careful what he says.
I agree with you 100%.
And I've listened to his evolution over time, and he went to this thing where he was talking stuff. He has to put on a show. That's his job. It wasn't an act. It was a show, because he has to get and tease out all the things he had to tease out. And in the meantime, he went through a very spiritual crisis. It was something that challenged his soul. But now here's the good part. He's come to a point in this whole situation to where he's comfortable. And if Doug Carter is comfortable with where this investigation is at, and he knows that good will win out over evil, then the rest of the process, it's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be challenges. It's going to be things happening that none of us can understand. But good's going to win. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's the whole point. Now, it's taken me an hour to explain it to you, to anybody else that doesn't watch this. But
no, actually, Brad, you've done a very
going to win. Good is going to win.
You've done a good job of explaining it. I mean, I've tried to tease, the reasons out of you why you were so passionate about the girls. I mean, I wasn't. Now, I've got kids. I've got these things, but you've been more passionate about these things. So I've teased that out of you. And thank you for actually confiding me with that and our listening audience, finally. I understand what you're saying about with, Doug Carter. I mean, I do believe you 100%. The man is not evil. He tried to do the best thing. He had all kinds of pressures. But in the end of the day, you're right. I think they've caught the right person. I think there is a resolution involved. The girls were innocent, even though they did, quote, dumb things. We all did dumb things at that age. I mean, I told my son recently, we do not come with an instruction manual. Do you think I knew how to raise a 14-year-old child? I did not. I made mistakes. Thankfully, nothing bad has happened. Doug Carter's in a small town just like ours. And if anything like this had happened in our town, we would be crushed. We would be dedicated to ourselves. Now, there's that big thing is, he had a crisis. You're absolutely right, because he wanted to be, oh, my God, my town has experienced this. But then he had to follow the law. So he had a crisis. I think it's solved. I think he feels better. I think we have everything we need for it. It's just what backs it up. Until they have the conviction, you can't have that soft, safe, thank God justice is served, because it hasn't happened yet. We love to think it's happened. But at some point, how many times is going, oh, well, it found out this cocksucker didn't read him his rights. That's a technicality. It's thrown out. Walk away. Until you're convicted, it's not solved. I like to think Doug has had a crisis. He solved it. He spoke about it. He feels good about it. That has nothing to do with whether or not this murder's been solved. Doug has done a great job. But the case is not solved just quite yet. And the people who are not morally responsible are announcing it's solved. No, it's not. We still need to feed tips in. We still need to talk about it. We still need to have conversation, because we do not know the evidence, because Doug Carter and law enforcement only know all the details. What and how led them to arrest him? Took 5 years to do it. Yes, it's going a little faster than we thought. Well, 2 weeks ago, it ain't going fast enough. See, there's what I'm saying. So what made this arrest? If we don't know, maybe they just wanted to solve it. Now, that's conspiracy theory, but think about the people who listen to these. How many conspiracy theory podcasts are out there? So what do you think about that?
I think amen, brother. Amen, brother. Hey, I'm going to call you back on another line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, bro. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
All right. Hey, I'm going to call you back on the other line. I appreciate you spending time with me tonight.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.